Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just very solid all round, and I would potentially go as far as saying that these guys are my favourite Japanese craft brewery, and they're one that I would always recommend people to have a look at if they're wanting to get a starting point in Japanese craft beer. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today is a really quite interesting one. It's one of the releases that I've wanted to try for quite some time, but the opportunity's never arisen with my trips to Japan. But thankfully, we can do it this year. And this one is a little bit different compared to the previous releases of this beer. And it's a style that is kind of truly Japanese and one that I think I will very much enjoy. Something I've never tried before, if memory serves me correctly. But needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the Tohoku region on the northern part of Honshu, the largest of the four main Japanese islands. We're going to go to Nagano Prefecture and to Yamanouchi City, to be precise. And that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Shiga Kogen beer brand, who are part of the Tamamura Honten sake company. So this particular beer is called ENGI. It comes in at 11.5% ABV, so one of the strongest beers we've tried from Shiga Kogen before, but they're describing this one as a sake IPA. Now, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you will know that I'm a big fan of Japanese sake. So when I saw a couple of years ago that this was something that Shiga Kogen were experimenting with, I thought, you know, we need to have a look at this sometime, and thankfully I was able to pick this one up this year. Now, apparently the previous iterations of this beer have come in around 8.5% ABV. They've done things a little bit differently this year, and it turned out kind of accidentally to be 11.5%. So this should be really quite interesting, and it's also a little bit of a beast. As I say, one of the strongest beers I'll have tried from Shiga Kogen once we get it done. But yeah, this is another beer that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Yamachi here in Osaka. Lovely little beer shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika, who's doing most of the work these days because Koji is a little bit older, but they've got a great selection of Japanese beers and things from further afield. But it's a must visit if you're a beer fan and you find yourself in Osaka. So check out the link to their Facebook page in the video description below, and you will find some really interesting stuff. Most of the beer that I review from Japan on the channel here is from there, if not from the breweries directly. But let's crack on with this one then and see how it got on. ENGI from Shiga Kogen beer at Tamamura Honten in Yamanouchi City, Nagano Prefecture, Tohoku region, Honshu, Japan. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Shiga Kogen beer before. There will definitely be more added to that list at some point in the near future, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So go in there, use the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, it will pop up, and then you can also check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. And make sure you do that because there are some really interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's crack on with this one and see what it has in store for us. On to my brewery notes to tell you a wee bit about Shiga Kogen beer and Tamamura Honten. So Tamamura Honten, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Yamanouchi in Nagano Prefecture in the Tohoku region, which is the northern part of Honshu, the largest of the four main Japanese islands. But this place is a couple of hundred kilometers to the north of Tokyo. But this area is known particularly for its ski slopes and also for its hot springs, and I've heard many good things about Nagano. I've heard it's one of the most beautiful prefectures in Japan, so definitely on my list of places to visit, as is pretty much everywhere in Tohoku. But the Tamamura Honten company began brewing sake back in 1805, and they began brewing beer more recently under the name Shiga Kogen beer, which translates into English as like Shiga Heights, Shiga Plateau, or Shiga Mountain beer, something like this. But apparently these activities started back in the early 2000s. But the head brewer at Shiga Kogen is Sato Ego, who joined the company in 2003. But the idea to brew beer apparently came when the number of skiers visiting the resort began to dwindle, and so in May of 2004 they applied for their brewing license and they received it 4 months later. But they bought their brewing equipment and they trained for a week at a brewery down in Kyushu before beginning their own commercial activities, and at this point they only had a consultant to help them out, but needless to say it's gone pretty damn well for them. But Tamamura Honten, the larger company, the overall company, parent company, whatever we're going to call it, but they produce their own hops, their own sake rice, barley, buckwheat and blueberries, and they actually have developed their own hop variety which is called Shinzu Wazi, and this is it's a hybrid of Czech Sats, or Žatec as they would call it, and a local Japanese variety. And they originally used it as a bittering hop for lagers, but they now use it as an aroma hop in a number of their IPAs as well. These days the brewery have 2 tasting rooms, which they call Tepper rooms. There's one at the brewery itself, and there's also one in Ichinose at this Hotel Chalet Shiga that you can go and check out as well. So hopefully we'll get to go and have a little look at those places. Maybe this summer. We'll need to see about that since I'm now based out in Asia. These days they're doing quite a lot of different beers. Probably the one that you really need to try would be the Sonoju. That's a very, very good IPA, and it was at the time quite easily the best Japanese West Coast IPA that was available, but they've done a number of other cool things over the years. Their imperial stouts are always great, and these days they've got quite an interesting barrel and sour beer program as well. They do some really interesting things with Japanese ume, plums, blueberries, and you name it, they play with it and do it very, very well, I have to say. But the bottle art that you'll find on the Shiga Kogen beers is designed by Tanaka Noriyuki, and it has been for many, many years. And as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 130 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Shiga Kogen beer and Tamamura Honten. If you want to learn more about the company, you can check out the website, and the website is linked to the parent company, Tamamura Honten. But one of the really cool things about that is that you can go in and read the brewer's notes. Sato Ego loves blogging about his beer and reading blogs about beer. That's how he's gone on to become probably the kind of godfather, if you like, of Japanese craft brewing, probably the most respected brewer in the country actually. But yeah, check out the website for Tamamura Honten, and you can also follow them on Facebook and Instagram, I believe, too. And that'll keep you up to date with the things going on. The other thing to point out about these guys is they have the Snow Monkey Festival, which is one of the most popular craft beer festivals in Japan. But when I was saying about the Sato Ego's blog, I thought with this beer being so unique and so unusual that we might have a little read of the notes that he wrote for this one then. So I've copied these from the Untappd page. So it says, for the past 3 years we've released Nigori Sake IPA in collaboration with Sake ENGI of Tamamura Honten. So ENGI is one of the sake releases that they do every year. But the basic idea was the same this time, but as a result of trying something new, the result was that it wasn't cloudy. So the base beer is the same number 10 this time as well. Until last year, Nigori, which was the name of the other iterations of this beer, just to be clear, was made by adding the final stage of fermentation of the homegrown rice Miyama Nishiki Junmai Ginjo. Junmai Ginjo is one of the types of sake, pure rice, milled to 50%. But this year, instead of Miyama Nishiki Junmai Ginjo, we used the homegrown Kinmon Nishiki Junmai Sake Moromi. The base number 10 is also made of Kinmon Nishiki. Then things took a different turn than before. Until last year, there wasn't much fermentation after adding Moromi to the sake, and as a result, the sake's Moromi was mixed in almost as it was, resulting in a drink that had the sweetness of the Moromi mixed with the aroma of the Ginjo yeast. And it's kind of like a hazy IPA with strong Japanese sake elements. So when it comes to brewing sake, they use different yeasts at different stages. and you've got multiple fermentations going on at the same time, just so that you're following me here with this one. So it's kind of like a hazy IPA with a strong Japanese sake element. However, this year the beer with Morome continued to ferment for more than 60 days. In regular beer, sugar that cannot be broken down by yeast remains as residual sugar. In ENGI, fermentation continued until the sugar content was completely broken down. As a result, Nigori until last year had an alcohol content of about 8.5%, but this time it's increased to 11.5%. In the process, it seems that the Morome, which should have had the same level of Morome as the previous Nigori, was broken down and cleared. Enzymes derived from koji saccharify the residual sugar and Morome components of the beer, while at the same time the yeast used in beer and sake converts the sugar into alcohol, resulting in a long period of re-fermentation. Anyway, as a result, I was able to create Nigori, which is not cloudy, the taste is completely different, and it's not cloudy to begin with. With the same name, fans of Nigori from last year will be confused. It has a strong taste derived from alcohol, so this name has been changed. So ENGI, and to be clear, ENGI is a Japanese word that is kind of like, it can mean origin, but it can also mean like, if you say it, it means like, oh, don't say that, kind of like this. So it's known as ENGI Sake Homegrown Rice Kinmon Nishiki Junmai. The reason why I said ENGI was because I was thinking, is this a blessing in disguise? I think you could say that sake and beer are a perfect fusion. There is some lees from the Morome at the bottom of the bottle, but the amount is much smaller than Nigori. The aroma is faint ginjo aroma with a citrusy aroma derived from hops. The sweet taste of sake comes with hints of Japanese blue citrus, white grapes and pineapple. I don't feel much bitterness from the hops, but it has a sharp sweetness. The taste is dry and you can't feel the alcohol content. So yeah, a little bit of a longer thing there for you, but I think with this beer being so unique, it is kind of interesting to know the background of this one. So basically he tried to repeat brewing the Nigori beer that he normally does using a different yeast, and it went a little bit crazy and came out a bit stronger. I think that's a way to summarise it. But yeah, ENGI 11.5% sake IPA. This should be really nice. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it gives us. I'm really curious about this. So they were talking about Junmai Ginjo sake in there. So when it comes to Japanese sake, you have quite a few different types, and it's the big variables in sake is how much you mill the rice, and that, you know, if you mill it down to 50% of its original size, then it's going to be a dai ginjo. If you mill it down to about 60% of its original size, it's ginjo. If you hear the word junmai, that means it's a pure rice sake. If you hear honjozo, they add a little bit of distilled alcohol to it. Nigori means unfiltered sake, so you get quite a little bit of sedimentation with that. But there are other types of sake as well, like senshu, which is not diluted, because sake, when you brew it, comes out to be about 19-20%, and they usually water it down a wee bit to bring the flavours out a little bit more. And there are other ones that are not coming into my mind at the moment, but you know, sake is something I do really like, and we do have some nice sakes to review on the channel at some point too. But anyway, you can see that when we poured this beer, it came out with about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said perfect white head there, and it was quite bumpy bubbles. You can see, because I've been gabbing away about different things with Japanese sake, that head has faded away to just be a kind of thinner little foamy layer on the top. You've got that nice ring around the edge of the glass, some medium-sized bubbles on the surface and some foamier ones a little bit further up. But yeah, you can see that this is a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This is going to go a long way to determine the EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. So yeah, in this case, I think the sake is giving it the clarity, to be honest with you. And you know, with sake, when we're talking about sake rice, the things that affect the colour of sake would just be the variety of yeast, and you know, exactly where it's grown and things like that as well, because you know, different water profiles, different soil profiles and things can affect stuff. But yeah, crystal clear. This one pretty much, but lovely pale golden straw colour, and just one or two bubbles of carbonation sticking toward the side of the glass there. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. This should be quite an interesting one. Really looking forward to this. Oh, right. This is interesting. I'm going to say straight away, for me, this is a really kind of unusual aroma. It actually reminds me of a number of the Helles lagers that I've come across. I wasn't expecting that at all, but aroma-wise, this is very, very similar to like a kind of fresh Helles lager. It doesn't come across as being too sake-like, and it doesn't come across as being too IPA-like. The aroma really is like a kind of Helles lager, but I think the flavour will be quite different in this one. Yeah, that is not what I expected at all out of the aroma of this beer. Yeah, so first impression of this one is that you get, you definitely get a nice little bit of like a fresh white bready bread crust in the backbone. There's a wee touch of wood, there's a wee bit of cracker. Yeah, definitely some kind of white bread in there. And it's only when you sort of smell more and more of this one, you can smell that little bit of sweetness coming out from the rice, from the sake side of things. When it comes to sake, you know, you should rate sake on things like fruitiness, impact, floral and grassy character. You know, spiciness is another one. Yeah, and you can really, the more that you smell of this beer, the more that you get the, yeah, the more that you smell of this beer, the more that you get, the more you get some kind of aromaticity from the rice. You can get a bit of oily sweetness in there. There is a little bit of a kind of like biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing out of this one as well. But yeah, the oily sweet rice is in there, a little bit of biscuit as I said. Then you've got a mix of the kind of wholemeal brown bread, and you've got a mix of the wholemeal brown bread and the kind of white bready notes in there too. It's absolutely great. Yeah, the smell on this one's really interesting. As I say, it does remind me of like a Helles lager, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's absolutely not what I was expecting with this one. But the more that you smell of it, as I say, the more you start to get the kind of oily sweet rice. I have had New England IPAs before with a bit of rice in them. It was Dugas Brewery in Landvetter near Gothenburg who were putting a sake rice in their IPAs for a while, and it worked really nicely. But this one really is nice. It gets more and more aromatic the more that you smell of it. So I don't know if there's too much else to say about the malty side of things in this beer, but I really think we're going to get more complexity out of this beer when we taste the thing. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it comes across as a little bit noble. I do wonder if they're using their own Shinzu Waze in this, because it has quite a lot of that kind of noble type character to it. So there's a little bit of earthiness in there, there's a wee bit of herbal character, but it's quite bright and floral. You've got a nice little bit of grassiness as well. Yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is really very nice. Yeah, floral aromaticity, nice little bit of grassiness, and yeah, as I say, it comes across very noble, and that's probably why I'm saying it comes across like a German Helles, or the other thing you could say, it's maybe got a little bit more spiciness to it, so it's maybe more akin to like a Czech Svetli, something like that. On the fruity side of things, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you're getting a little bit of like a fresh green apple, there is a little bit of like a melon or a gooseberry sort of thing coming out of it. I don't really get the kind of pineapple notes that they're talking about in the blog, but maybe we'll get some of that in the flavour. But yeah, in the aroma for me, certainly like fresh green apple, a little bit of oily pear, gooseberry, maybe a wee hint of melon, something like that. And those are common fruity characters that you can get in sake, of course. But when we talk about nigori, it's kind of like nigori is more of a kind of sweet character that you get out of it. And a lot of people I really like Nigori's, but it's actually one of the cheaper sakes you can get, and a lot of people prefer, you know, the ginjos and the dai ginjos and stuff like this. But I do enjoy a Nigori every so often. But as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. It's certainly really not what I expected in the slightest, so I will say that, and it gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, I think it's time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. This is the ENGI, an 11.5% sake IPA from Shiga Kogen beer in part of the Tamamura Honten company. Let's get stuck into this and see what it's all about. Slanja, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. This is really interesting. I mean, you can feel the booziness out of this beer, but it is like nothing I've ever had before. And it really does give you in the middle of your palate, the thing that really lingers there is that floral, aromatic, sake type quality in there. Wee teeny bit of sediment there in the bottom of the bottle. But yeah, not too much. This is a really quirky beer, this one. It's very clean and very light. When you think that it's very clean and very light for an 11.5% IPA. But I like this. It's just one of these things that takes you a little bit of time to get your head around, to be honest with you. So yeah, it does give you that little bit of booziness and things. It's really interesting. It's really interesting, this beer. Yeah, so for me, this one, I'd really be curious to see the brew sheet of this, because it feels like it's got a little bit of barley malt in it, but it really feels as if it's more of a sake, this one, rather than anything else. And that makes it even more interesting, because the aroma came across as so Helles or Schwettli like. But yeah, we'll just break the beer down and describe the flavours that I'm getting a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So middle third of your palate, then you can feel the backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. Yeah, so lovely fresh white bready bread crust coming out of the beer. That forms the backbone of the beer. You do get little hints of woody and crackery note in there, and I am getting little hints. That dry, grainy bread crusty sort of thing lingers there, but I'm getting little hints of like a brown bread or a white bread above that. But that almost, the further into the aftertaste you go, that almost feels like it's a little bit of a placebo effect, to be very honest with you. Yeah, because then you start to get you can feel all the kind of ricey and sweeter aspects of the beer coming out. So yeah, the sweet ricey character that the sweet ricey character that's coming out of this one, it really comes across as quite like sort of floral and aromatic in the middle of your tongue. So you can feel above that little bit of what I suspect is a wee touch of barley malt. And as I say, I'm not 100% sure they've used barley malt in this, to be quite honest with you. You can just feel there's a little bit of a like an oily circle in the middle of your palate there, and that's the rice. So it gives you a little bit of sweetness, like you can feel that nice kind of oily sweetness from the sake side of things. But for me, I think there's a lot of floral aromaticity to the variety of rice that they've used in here. Was it Konmiki it was called? I forget. But yeah, there's a lot of floral aromaticity to it. But you're also getting, you can feel that sort of bitiness of the alcohol in this beer. Yeah, you can feel the bitiness of the booze in this one too. And as I say, to me, in the middle of the tongue, it actually comes across as this quite spicy, floral aromatic sort of thing. But in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel like a little circle there. So you feel that little circle, and you've got the sweet kind of, you've got that sweet, oily, kind of, it's a little bit like a kind of spicy caramel or something like that. So yeah. So yeah, the way that that pieces together too is really quite interesting. Yeah, so sweet oily caramel in the dead centre of your palate, but it's quite minimal. A little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, but yeah, it kind of sits on top of this circle of quite slightly sweet and more kind of like floral aromatic-y, slightly spicy rice, but it's a bit difficult to distinguish between the kind of floral aromaticity of the rice and the kind of sort of boozy bite that this beer has. It's really interesting in that sense. I think we've said everything at this point. I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate. So let's go to the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build-up in there, a wee bit of, you know, it's just like a very light kind of airy bready character, a little bit of brown bread on the base, white bread on top. And as I often say, on the back third of the palate, you'll get similar flavours to what you do in the middle third of your palate. They just come out at different intensities, and that's definitely the case here. So you can feel the, you can absolutely feel the, you can absolutely feel the kind of toasty sort of bread crusty sort of thing there. Feels a little bit drier on the back third of the palate. Then you've got a brown bready character which is above that. That becomes a little bit lighter and more kind of airy, but also drier. Then the white bready character sits above that, and some of the kind of bitiness, the boozy bitiness, and some of the aromaticity of the yeast kind of just creeps over onto that back third of the palate as well. And then you get the kind of yeasty nature of the beer coming out of this one, and the yeast actually feels like a kind of dry white bready character. It has got a wee bit of sweetness to it. So yeah, the dry sweetness that comes out of this one is quite interesting. On the yeasty side of things, yes, like a white bread, a kind of crisp, dry, white bready type character that comes out of this, and it's really it has a little bit of an almost kind of peppery thing to it, but you can definitely feel that on the back third of your palate the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more, which is quite nice. I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer, so we should move on toward the hoppy side of things. I'm feeling though, the more that you drink of this beer, the more it kind of mellows out, and the more it shows you a little bit of its kind of, the more it shows you a little bit of its kind of, it's kind of bitey hoppy characters. I really do like how that, how it all kind of just pieces together, this one. So it's a thumbs up from me. Yeah. So let's focus on the hoppy side of things. In the back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of herbal character, and as you push further forward toward the front corners of your palate, it does give you a good little bit of like floral aromatic spice, and it does have that sort of Czech Zats sort of character out of it. Just when I'm saying that, Žatec is the Czech name for Sats. Sats, of course, is the German name, because you know, Bohemia used to be, or the Sudetenland used to be lived on by both ethnic Germans and Czechs, and it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So quite a few things have dual names, but yeah, you do get that typical Czech noble hop spice out of this beer. So potentially a bit of Shinzo-wazi in this one. But round the front curve of the tongue, you get a wee bit of that lighter grassiness, which is great, and it has a wee bit of zestiness to it, especially the further into the aftertaste you go. But I like that with this one. So, for me, the the fruity side of things in this one is quite interesting. So that front third of your palate, then the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you've got that wee bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread, the white bread, and then the base of that front third of your palate is the kind of bread crusty sort of thing. You get a wee bit of the bread, and you can feel a wee bit of the sweeter side of the sake rice coming out there. Then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity ester just rolls its way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that pieces together is really quite nice. So for me, the fruity side of this beer is quite is really quite interesting. It's kind of like I was saying before. You've got a wee bit of this kind of at the back of that front third of your palate. You've got a wee bit of an oily kind of melon. Yeah, you've got that nice kind of oily melon. As you move further forward, it's got a wee bit of you've got a bit of oily melon. You've got a little bit of a kind of gooseberry sort of note that comes out into the aftertaste, and then as you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue, it's got a little bit more of like a fresh green apple, kind of like that. I don't get the pineapple and the blueberry and things like that Sato Ego was saying he gets. I really get more of a melon, gooseberry, fresh green apple. I think that's probably a fair statement to make with this one. Yeah, maybe a little bit of oily pear into the aftertaste too, but again, that's quite minimal. Yeah, in honesty, I think that's everything we can really say about this beer from the flavour perspective, but it's pretty damn nice actually. So yeah, to round off then with the mouthfeel, so I would say the mouthfeel in this case is more. The mouthfeel in this case is really, in a way, it's kind of typical in Japanese because it's very clean and it actually feels very light. This is one of the lightest 11.5% beers that I've ever had, in fairness. It feels very clean like a sake. It's got that little bit of oiliness to it, which you expect when rice is involved. But it does have a wee bit of spice and dryness and bite to it, which is interesting. For me, I would say I would go as far as saying that the beer does actually have a fair little bit of bitterness to it. It must be about 40 IBUs, maybe even 50 actually, but like I say, the kind of floral aromatic spice that you get from the hops and from the sake rice and just the kind of boozy bite that the beer has, all would be, you could argue that all of those are contributing to that. So dry graininess underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a wee bit of sweetness on top, and then yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really quite interesting. On the fruity side of things, you've got that lovely oily character, which I think is nice. Like I say, it's melon, fresh green apple, a little bit of oily pear, all typical elements of sake, of the fruity side of sakes, I should say. And yeah, you've just got that wee bit of nice kind of Czech noble hop quality coming out of this one. overall, this has been a really interesting thing to taste. I would go as far as saying that it's probably like 75% sake, 25% beer, or, you know, 2/3 sake, 1/3 beer. It's kind of like that. And in a lot of ways, it has an almost kind of pilsnery type quality to it. The closest thing I've had to this before, I would say, is like some of the kind of imperial pilsners and stuff like that. And there's something about this beer that the flavour of this one really does remind me of like fresh, unfiltered Pilsner Urquell. It has a little bit of that quality too, but obviously you've got a lot more sweetness because of the presence of the rice. Yeah, so it's a really interesting beer that's kind of confuddled me a wee bit, but still, I like reviews like this where you're trying things that you normally wouldn't come across. But this is definitely something that is worth trying if you get the chance. If you like Japanese sake, you'll enjoy this. If you like a kind of nice, crisp, spicy, floral sort of Pilsner beer, you'll enjoy this too. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer. It shows you more and more of the sweeter side of the sake the further into the aftertaste that you go as well. But yeah, let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Shiga Kogen beer, and give me some sake recommendations from Tamamura Honten as well. But this one was the ENGI, an 11.5% sake IPA, a sort of special version of the Nigori that they release every year as their regular sake IPA. So we need to keep an eye out for that one next year when I'm back in Japan. But yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.